Welcome back, baseball fans, to this eliminating the Cleveland Indians video. What you're looking at right now is last year's result, which was a rather strange result to have a year ago. They won the division with a 21-20 record because Detroit and the Expos faded very hard down the stretch. So somebody had to win that division. They won it just a game over 500. They improbably won in the wild card round, beating the Red Sox. But then they lost in the divisional round, and when you add it all up, it meant they finished a game under 500. But it meant they also had a low draft pick because they advanced to the final 8. So they were a very improbable final 8 team. And statistically, when you look at the overall picture, a 265, 441 team, they had Frank Robinson a year ago to get them into the playoffs, and sure, he did that. Basically as a 500 club. They would then deal him in the offseason, so he wouldn't come back to defend their title. Chris Chambliss had a decent rookie card, hitting 271. Ray Fosse catching 268. There's some nice little numbers here, nice pieces here, a lot of power there. Pitching-wise, Mengori was the all-star closer, the 140 ERA. Gaylord Perry wins 10 games doing Gaylord Perry things. The rest of that pitching staff's dreadful, though. Dick Tidrow in the 2 spot. Mike Kilkenny in the 3 spot. These guys are bad. Steve Hargan's a lone good year in 1970. Ray Lamb was atrocious as the long man. But interestingly, a year passes, and now let's take a look at the past season of the Indians in 2023. What's interesting here is that they don't make it to the playoffs, because the overall American League is better. They're 18-15. They miss out on the playoffs altogether. So they finish with a better record. Statistically, they hit a little bit better, pitched a little bit better, scored 155 runs, gave up 143. So the arrow points up even though they didn't win the division. And they are in a fortuitous spot as they are not in the American League East anymore, not playing in the same division with Baltimore, Boston, New York. They just have the Tigers really to worry about, along with the Expos and the expansion Ohio players. But in the most recent, as you watch their season end, they lost 3 straight to Baltimore, and they lost in the round of 3 to the Yankees, 2 teams from the American League East. So we're seeing Chris Chambliss get better. He's now hitting .315. Duke Sims, the cleanup hitter against righties. This team must have faced a ton of lefties, folks, because Duke Sims is in a platoon DH and only had 64 at-bats. Just 2 homer, 4 RBI with an outstanding card. Swoboda had a memorable year, getting a ton of walks. 464 on base for Swoboda there. Oscar Gamble's strange season. He did not homer, which is insane. He had 20 in a full season for the 74 Indians. Put up a goose egg, did not leave the park, and that's not going to help your team, who only hit 18 homers. A year ago, they hit 45, granted in more games. Mark Belanger was the guy brought in to play short when Frank Robinson was moved out, as they needed the extra outfielder. Of course, Belanger is a 1 shortstop. He also hit 198, virtually 100 points lower than where Frank Robinson hit. So, looking at the pitching, Gaylord Perry was okay. He wasn't, 324, 118 whip, just 6-5 with 6 complete games. Mengori, again, his all-star self. Ray Lamb improved significantly, lowering his ERA by 5 runs will do it. Jim Perry was brought in as part of that Frank Robinson deal. It was Frank Robinson for Jim Perry and Mark Belanger. So you get an ace and a 1 shortstop for a fading Hall of Famer. But Jim Perry didn't pitch that well, nor did Hilgendorf, and of course Kilkenny was horrendous. And that kind of explains the Cleveland season. It just fell apart at the end when the competition got better. So let's take a look at this Cleveland stack here. We're going to pull the 71 cards away, leaving the 72 cards. We're going to see what we have coming back next year and who's going away. Okay, so 871, year 1, 871 cards have to go away, and this dozen will come back next year. The desired split is 7 and 5. The Indians are going to go with 8 and 4, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 8 and 4. So they have to find half of a pitching staff. We can order this. And undercut. Oh, you can see. So I'm talking about this underused Duke Sims card. It's coming back for one more try of that Monster 72 season. He could be your catcher now with, I believe, Ray Fosse, a free agent. So he's your catcher, or can be your catcher. Chambliss at first. Jack Brohammer at second base, though you might be able to improve him, at least his defense at second. Buddy Bell at third. And then a bunch of outfielders. You have a full outfield of lefties at least. My goodness, you've got Lowenstein in left, Pinson in center, Gamble in right, and Johnson can be a DH. So a lot of good sticks. Now let's take a look at the pitchers coming back. Of course, Gaylord's going to run this thing back. In the last 2 rounds of the tournament, he could not beat Baltimore. He lost 2-0 to them. He could not beat the Yankees. He had a 4-0 lead against them and then gave up bases loaded, no out situations in the middle innings to lose 7-4. And there it is, 24-game winner in 72. I think that's the Cy Young winner. I would hope 24 wins will get you Cy Young. I don't know if it was him or Catfish Hunter. And his brother did a nice job too in 74. Then you have Tidrow as your third righty in the rotation who can also pitch on 3 days rest. You need a lefty starter. Hilgendorf's a lefty reliever, which is fine. He does a nice job, but you need a lefty starter and someone better than the guy you had, which was Kilkenny. So overall, I mean, things are on the up for this team. They're going to be right back into next year. And again, this realignment, it plays well for the Indians and Tigers. They get the opportunity where they might not have had it in traditional MLB because they're in their own division. So let's see if Cleveland can take advantage of their good fortune here. Okay, let's take a look at the 8 hitters. We begin with Belanger, who wasn't even their property. It was a series of moves where they went after and got Frank Robinson off the Orioles. Then they sent him to an expansion team who had Belanger and brought Belanger back with Jim Perry. So he played his whole career in Baltimore, but this was a nice theft for the Indians. Now, after a nice 71 where he hits 266, the average will start to plummet for 4 straight years until it rebounds in 76. Well, we're a year away. We can't get the 76 season. So if Baltimore, says we want our shortstop back, you could make a deal with him. It's not like a big deal to lose this guy. He's going to be in the league for his defense. We know that. So the question remains, do you trade him or not? So we're going to make him a keeper for now. But there's a reasonable chance Baltimore has the Indians shortstop, Frank Duffy. Duffy will have a better stick for the Indians. Belanger will have a better glove for the Orioles. We think those two guys are going to be traded for each other at some point in this offseason. Next guy is Ray Fosse. And this could be where he moves along from the Indians. Interestingly, Dave Duncan played for Oakland. Ray Fosse plays for Oakland. Dave Duncan plays for Cleveland. We mentioned Duke Sims earlier. You could get Duke Sims and Dave Duncan to be a platoon if you're willing to let Ray Fosse go. The other question is, I mean, at a certain point, the A's are going to start collecting their dynasty World Series winners. And you can look right here and see that Fosse got 2 rings. So he's got 1 more year in Cleveland in 72, a couple years in Oakland. The bat really suffers until 76, when oddly enough, look where he goes. He goes back to Cleveland. So you see there is a path here where the Indians just say, know what, Oakland? You ain't getting your guy. We're keeping him in 72, and at the end of that year, we're going to bump him up to 76, where he hits 300 again. So there is a theory here that you just hold on to Ray Fosse. Don't let him go to Oakland. Oakland might have to settle for Dave Duncan as their catcher for these years, which isn't a bad consolation prize, I suppose. But for now, because it's 72 and it says Cleveland right there, I'm going to veto the deal to the A's. I'm going to keep him as a member of the Indians. Ray Fosse. If they're fortunate enough to have too many keepers, we could orchestrate a trade. But let's see if they have too many. They can only keep 4 guys. Next guy's Eddie Leone, who had a nice defensive year in 71. Plays from 68 to 75. He'll play for Cleveland most of the time until he goes to the White Sox here. So this season was a pretty decent one we just had. He had 261. He was a 2 second baseman. So that was nice. He got nice results. He's an okay guy. Was in a platoon with Brohammer. Now next year he's hitting 200. And then his stick is not there anymore. We would assume his glove might be. But basically, as a pretty ordinary kind of guy, we could put him on waivers and expect something better. Or if he goes unclaimed in waivers, we could ask him to come back and play for us. But for now, we're going to go make sure that he does have a Cleveland card in 72. We're going to go to Gary's roster page, look at the 72 rosters for the Indians, and see if he's still there in Cleveland. And there he is, E. Leone right there. So he can get waivers for this team, Eddie Leone. As we figured, we would prefer Fosse, a good catcher, over an average infielder, to Leone, if it came down to those 2 particular guys. The next player is Swoboda, and he had a fine little year. Was a free agent. Nobody really wanted this guy. I don't know why. Ton of on base. His batting average isn't phenomenal, but the dude knows how to work a count, and he can draw some walks here. It was a Met, Expo, Yankee was his path. So he's not associated with Cleveland. This is the year he had. You see the 258 average, but check out the 381 on base and a 733 OPS. Now in 72, he's a little bit more mortal. I like to say he is just a guy at this point. But we have to see if he gets waivers with the 72 Yankees. So his card has to exist in in the world of Strat-O-Matic for me to give him waivers. He's not listed there. He needs to be an extra player, and he is. Here he is as a Yankee extra player in 72. That means I can give him waivers versus retiring him. Retiring is the break glass in case of emergency. You only want to retire a guy if his career is over, not if he has some years left. Okay, next player is Mike Kilkenny, also not associated with the Indians. And the guy got into the league and stayed into the league because he throws with his left arm. It's a nice way of putting it. I got to kind of look at a little bit deeper and see how his... So yeah, the 69, this is the year of the expansion, 69. So there was a lot of players added to the league because you had 4 new teams. And a lot of AAA guys made it into the majors. And some stuck around, some didn't. And usually most of the worst guys pittered out by 72. This could be the path we see here at Kilkenny. Nice year when there's 32 teams and a lot of bad hitters and bad pitchers in the league, but then once it starts tightening up, the roster start tightening up, and the big expansion season's over with, the numbers start to get closer to the middle. And here we have him in 70 and 71. Oddly enough, in 72, statistically he's better than in those other years, but his whip is $157. Would like to put this dude on waivers. Look at this path though. Detroit, Oakland, San Diego, and Cleveland. That must have driven the Strat-O-Matic creators nuts. Which team do you put him on? And if it's not a clear answer, then don't make his card. So we have to check for Kilkenny, who actually, check that out, he was an Indian. My mistake. I thought he never had an association here. He was an Indian, and he did okay. Look at that, 341 but a 150 whip. But he did okay in 72. We used the 71 card with the Tigers because I guess they didn't have room for a 72 card. So we got to look for Mike Kilkenny, see if he exists. He could be anywhere. Cleveland, San Diego, Oakland, or Detroit. Oh my goodness. Cleveland, Detroit, and Oakland in the American League. Well, he's not here in Cleveland where he had the most innings, but sometimes Strat won't do that. They'll put him on a lower inning team. There's Oakland without a Kilkenny. Cleveland has no Kilkenny. Detroit, the same. Oaktown, no. And we're talking the Padres in the National League, was it? In his 4 1/3 innings? Yeah, I think Strat-O-Matic threw their hands up in the air and said, hey, what are we going to do with this guy? He was on 4 different teams. And the answer was, leave him alone. So with that, we are going to retire Mike Kilkenny, which is kind of a shame in that we didn't get to see his best statistical performance of 72 with the Indians. With the Indians here, they had to go to this performance with the Tigers. And that's the long-winded career of Mike Kilkenny wrapped up today. Next player is Ray Lamb. 2 years ago, he was awful. Last year, pretty darn good. So that's a good curve to have. Short little career here. Nice little season here. A 3.35 ERA. He actually does better the following year with a better whip. So everything's trending well to keep the guy. 107 innings. We know Strat-O-Matic should make that card. Let's go double check though. Make sure Ray Lamb does have a 72 Indian card. And he does. At this point, he's a keeper, but there's a strange caveat here is that he doesn't have a room in the rotation because they have Gaylord Perry, Jim Perry, and Dick Tidrow. They already have 3 righties. They need a lefty. So he's going to have to stay as the long man, which is fine. If he's a quality long man, leave him there. So that's what they'll do. And now we go to the back end. This could hurt here, folks. We got some good pitchers losing some great seasons. Vicente Romo. From 68 to 82. He came back in 82 for a cup of coffee late. Let's go take a look at this. Yeah, he was out of this for a long time. At age 39, he threw 35 innings for the Dodgers in 82. And that was kind of cool for him to come back like that. Here we are. So 71, he was a White Sox. Again, he's there a year later. And he puts up similar performance in 51 innings. Do we get that card, though, for the White Sox in 72? Let's check that out. And he's not there alphabetically. Oh, this would be really disappointing. Oh, there he is. V. Romo. Okay, so he exists again. So yeah, he comes back as well. So it looks like a break even with Lamb and Romo can resume their careers. They can come back and keep doing what they were doing in the same kind of performance. Which leaves us to Steve Mingori, who was a 4-year All-Star, or 3 out of the 4 years, with a 71 card. Remember, it's a 4-year carryover league, so you can take any particular year 4 times, depending when he starts. He's got a Kansas City hat here. We look at his numbers beginning in 70, and we had this. This is the card right there, folks. 1.42 ERA and a 97-cent whip for Steve Mingori, 56 innings. So now we have to look at 72 and beyond. So he'll play through the whole decade, most of it with the Royals. He doesn't go there till 73, so he's still in Cleveland for 72. They aren't beholden to him, are the Indians. He's got a 1.8 whip with his card. And before we, trash that performance, just a reminder that there's a shortage of left-handed pitching in the league, and so every lefty pretty much almost makes it. There's very few lefties that don't get in the league in some way. As long as you can get lefties out, even if you're getting crushed by righties, they might get you into the league just for getting lefties out. So, question 1, can he get waivers with his 72 performance if they don't want him? And then the other question is, do we put a trade out there with the Royals, who could certainly use him? Kansas City has been stinking up the joint. They've had Rich Hinton, Larry Gura, and who's the other lefty they use? Oh, Splittorf. They could certainly replace Hinton in the Kansas City bullpen with Mangori here in one of these good seasons. So I think he's a trade chip. He's worth a keeper. And this is what you do here. He's worth being kept quality-wise, for his quality. But with too many keepers, he might be traded. And maybe they hold on to Belanger. So it looks like the Indians, Fossey, Lamb, and Romo will stick around. They got 2 waiver guys. They got to find a guy to retire. But it's good to have an abundance in this column. This is the guys you want to keep. You can only keep 4, and the fact that you like 5 is good news for a Cleveland team that wants to keep building on this roster, as they have a legitimate chance to win a division year in and year out now that they're not playing in the American League East. That's it, eliminating the Cleveland Indians. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.